Welcome back to Imperfect, the Heart Centered Leadership Podcast. And today I want to welcome David Olcott to the show. Welcome, David.
Thanks, Deb. Thanks for having me on the show. It's been a
Well,
while.
I'm excited to have you, and I'm delighted that you were interested, and I love interviewing, and I'm sure I'm going to learn lots from you, as our listeners will. So I've got some great leadership questions. So if you're ready, I'm ready to go.
Let's dive in.
Okay, first leadership question is around identity and leadership. You mentioned that you're not here to create our identity, not just discover it. How does this philosophy that you have shape the way on how you lead today and inspire others to do the same?
So a little bit of background with that. I definitely have spent so much of my life just buying into this idea that, from movies and tapes and very well-meaning people in my life, Deb, that just says, you got to get out there and find yourself and discover who you are. And I took it literally. So, I'm looking underneath every single rock that I could. Hey, do you know who I am? And I'm having some fun here. But then I ran into this amazing master about almost 30 years ago that let me know that you're not here to discover who you are. You're actually here to create who you are.
Yes.
And that philosophy, as I started looking around the world and all these celebrities and very successful people, I noticed that trend. I noticed they weren't buying along with what everybody else told them about them. As a matter of fact, you can see the people today, you can't talk them out of themselves. No matter how much you want to shame, guilt, or whatever you want to do to them, they have one certain characteristic. They know who they are and they cannot be talked out of it. That is a great gift to live a life by.
Yeah. And, almost 10 years ago when I became a yoga teacher, again, just for my own hobby, and I love yoga, that is rooted deeply in the philosophy of yoga. We're not on this highway journey, whatever you want to call it, path of discovery. We're on a path of creation. So it's really lovely to hear you frame that around identity and leadership. I love that. Okay, my next question is around the next evolution of leadership. You believe that the secret to mankind's next evolution isn't learning something new, but applying what we already know. So, my question is, how can leaders embody this in their daily presence?
So, wow, leaders, I think we're so caught up in this knowledge-based identity, right? That there's got to be new information, new information. I've got to go read this. I got to go to the seminar. And those are very powerful. Listen, they're very powerful enhancements, but
Yes.
there is no stronger element than experience.
Yes.
If you don't take that knowledge and you apply it and turn it into experience, Deb, you know what I'm talking about. You are the epitome of this. And I think that's why people love you and adore you so much, is because you don't just talk this stuff. You live and embody this information.
Yes.
And I will tell you, when I take a look at what I want to master in my life, that's it. That's the key characteristic I'm after, that says, I know you're not going to like everything I do. I get that. I'm past that phase. But what I want to do is I want to love everything I do.
Yes. That self awareness, that's powerful. And I just want to add to one really important point that you said. Knowledge is so powerful, but when you add it in and master it with your wisdom, the bridging of that gap is maturity. That's the trifecta.
Beautifully.
And behave your brand. It's that simple. Don't tell me how great you are. Show me, right? It's very simple. It's simple, yet it's so complicated for many, right? Okay, my third question is around structure and vision. You've highlighted that the foundation of a business is just as important as its vision, product, and service. So, what do you feel and think are the key elements of a strong leadership foundation? And you can take this from a leadership vantage point, a company vantage point, wherever you want to take it.
So I think there's been so much emphasis on celebrating entrepreneurs, CEOs in our country, kind of stuff, and we're forgetting about the other folks that really contribute to that vision, which is the labor force. And you can see that playing out in our world today.
Yeah.
Capital versus labor, right?
Yeah.
And we're finding some, well, we're not there yet, obviously, but we're finding some new balance in that place.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that labor force is part of the management teams and leaders that go along with us. And that is part of the structure that I'm talking about. And I will tell you that so much emphasis is placed upon the idea of things as opposed to the application. And if you're going to apply an idea, then you naturally should have structure because the definition of success, which may sound very varied and a lot of different ways that you can, encapsulate or have a metric for success, there's one single characteristic that must be with success. You must be able to duplicate it.
Yeah.
If you can't
Absolutely.
duplicate it, it's just luck.
Yeah.
How do you duplicate sums? Well, David, if there's one thing I know about human beings by studying them, we all do one thing fantastically well. I do it exceptionally well. We forget. And if we don't write that stuff down,
Yeah.
we're going to forget it. And that's the structure I'm talking about is when you have something that you have done really well and you write that down, you create processes, you create structure. It's duplicatable. Therefore, it's definition of success. When you don't take the time to write that stuff down and you just count on all that memory, all that pressure from society and all the craziness going on in the world and the chaos that's happening, strip that memory away. It's hard to duplicate that when you don't have that structure in place.
Yeah, and the show is called Imperfect, and forgetting is okay, but again, it goes back to what you said in question number 1 when we were talking about identity. It's okay to forget. Be self-aware, have a laugh at yourself, but again, it's the discipline and the structure that have to go together because if you don't have the behavior, you're not going to be able to put in a structure. Just it's so powerful stuff. We make it sound so common sense in this flowing conversation, but it's probably two of the biggest things that we see on a daily basis among leaders because of that pressure of business acumen and, that trifecta of knowledge, skill, and ability. Like sometimes there's not room to breathe. And again, it's that self awareness piece. You're better to slow the bus down, get disciplined, put the structure in place, and then move on. Again, easier said than done, right? Okay, my last question is obviously one of my favorites leading with service. You've said that to serve others, we first must learn to serve ourselves. So, what self leadership habits have been most transformative for David?
So, the work that we're talking about is literally about how to get the hell out of your own way. And I really mean that hell because when we suffer and we haven't done the work internally, all we do is bring that hell forth with us. You can't deliver something to somebody else that you don't possess. So when I was much younger and I was rageful and angry and upset and depressed and sad, guess what I was bringing to the table, Deb? I was bringing all that stuff that was my own personal hell until I learned that I had to heal that internally, take care of me. I couldn't be in service to you because all I was waiting for is my next opportunity to talk. Okay, she's Deb saying this and she's asking me the question, what am I thinking about? And it was all this mind chatter going on. I wasn't present with people like I'm doing with you now because that's the connection we're after. That's the authenticity that's missing on our planet right now that we're so afraid of that it's going away. Talk about machine world and all this AI stuff and we're losing touch with each other.
Yep.
That's the missing component about bringing this back together and starting to be this authentic self again and truly being in service of others.
And people don't realize when you're sitting with someone, whether it's a conversation like this or we're sitting across from each other having lunch, we have that non-energy, that nonverbal communication where people can tell you're presently and physically sitting there, but your mind is somewhere else. It is a honed skill. And you can't do it with a busy mind. And again, it comes back to that self-awareness piece. For me, I have to meditate. Like there's so much going on. And in order to have a break after being with a client, I have to quiet my mind so I can let go of that conversation, have my own calmness to be able to go into another conversation. So these back to back meetings that I see on schedules with no white space, they're not serving anyone. And they're just on that path of burnout and really unhealthy stress. And I wish, I see globally right now, I think the virus that a lot of companies and leaders have is fear. And it's going to trickle in. It's going to trickle into leadership, it's going to trickle into the culture. But again, until somebody has that self-awareness to say, okay, I'm not jumping on that bandwagon. I'm going to put a full stop here. It's powerful to do that, but not everybody has the courage or the know-how.
Great.
Okay, I'm going to ask you some fun questions now. Our listeners can.
Pressure's off now.
So we're going to talk about the samurai mindset because I know your company's called Samurai Success. So if you could pick any samurai warrior or historical figure to have over for dinner, who would you pick and why?
Wow. So I think, we've written a book about, this concept called Swords of Illumination. And one of the main focal points, and of course, one of the most dramatic and most historically known, is a gentleman named Musashi, a true and obviously samurai. Now, he would be difficult to have over for dinner because he was quite the warrior and it was, constantly fierce and stuff like this. And he would just eat very little. But I would be very interesting just from his book of Five Rings and all the other things he's written about. He just has such an interesting philosophy that he moved through the violence of being a samurai into the mindset of being a samurai. And that's what I want to sit down and really just pick his brains about and just go, how did you move through that? What was some of the motivations for those kind of things? And really get a sense of how that evolved.
Absolutely. And, getting a grasp or even a glimpse at a mindset like that, it's really the key, isn't it?
Truly is.
I love it. Okay, let's talk about unexpected talents. If I were to call up some of your closest friends to describe a hidden talent of yours that most people wouldn't know of, what would your friends tell me?
I can get in trouble like nobody else. I can really do that because I'm just so darn curious. And I love that about me. I really do. Because I wasn't always that way.
Yeah.
I went through this phase that I was like I had to know everything. I guess maybe that was my teaching, my programming, whatever it was that, you're supposed to be in charge. You're supposed to know. You're never supposed to ask. I am not that. I'm the person who asks those questions. I believe that our clients are masters of their business. I'm not here to teach them their business. I'm here to remind them who they are and then be curious enough to be able to say, let me elicit that mindfulness out of your brain and put it onto a piece of paper so that we can talk about it from a map perspective. We can both see it together. Literally being on the same page with someone creates this connection, a rapport that's just downright phenomenal.
Yeah. And, trust and rapport is key.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people forget about that. Or again, going back to what you said earlier about being present and what a gift that is, you can ruin that very easily and lose that trust and rapport that you might have with somebody. That's a huge thing. Okay, let's talk about curveball learning. I know you're passionate about moving into the learning curve. What's a quirky or unusual skill you've learned recently that even surprised you?
Well, I didn't know I could ride a motorcycle that fast safely. So every couple of years, because I'm a coach and I ask our clients to move into the learning curve, learn something new.
Yeah.
I knew I had to be willing to do that for myself, right? Because as we get older, one of the first things I think we tend to give up is the courage that it takes to move into the learning curve because you're no longer the expert, right? It's like, oh, I'm scared about that. Moving into that is a fascinating characteristic that I've really enveloped and involved into because I love it. I love to learn. It's
Yeah.
my favorite thing on this planet. So, since I am asking other people to do it, me moving into this, every couple of years I go do something really crazy. And I'll go long range precision shooting, or I'll jump out of an airplane, and parachute, or I'll go and I'll race motorcycles or race cars or do, stunt riding on motors. I've never done any of these things, Deb. Never.
Yeah.
So, and oh gosh, playing hockey. Oh my goodness. I would literally fall over the player's bench to be able to get on the ice, and then I'd get my skates underneath. And by the end of the summer, we'd won the championship, the summer championship, and I was the assist leader. So how do you go through that, never knowing it before, and get excited about it, stay excited about it?
Yeah.
That is definitely a superpower to have.
So let me add an extra part B to this question. So you're stepping into that to model for your client so you can really sit in the observer's chair and share. So as children, I'm a nana now. I have two little granddaughters, and it's so lovely to witness the awe and the wonder of new things. So where do you think, and this can be self-reflective or it can even be from observation, where do you think we lose that ability in our lifeline, in our lineage? Where do we lose that awe and wonder and that depth of curiosity? Because we lunge into adulthood, which is different for everybody. And are you now saying that you're back in that awe and wonder, and that's what the learning curve has really provided for you?
So I think it's our true superpower as a human being is that we have the power to create meaning behind everything. That is the ultimate superpower given to us by God. That just says you can name things, you can give meaning to things. So for me, I decided to change the learning curve, learning something new where I'm not the expert. I'm not knowing this. I'm going to look like an absolute fool. And instead of being afraid of that, like most people are, and I certainly have been in my past, I went into there as like, no, I'm going to take this on as not a master teacher, but a master student.
Mm.
Now, it allows me to still be the master, but now I'm really just so curious and I can't help but learn something new because of that identity I've created for myself before going into the learning curve. A strategy we spend a lot of time
Absolutely.
teaching our clients.
I join you in that. I've been teaching yoga for 9 years, but I go on these little hiatuses, and, different studios will say, "Do you want to teach?" And I'm like, "Not right now." And they're like, "Why?" And I said, "Because I want to be back on the mat as the student. Because every time you get on that mat, there's a different experience, a different intention." And my older yoga teacher friends, they laugh and they're like, "Are you still back in student mode?" And I said, "I'm always going to stay in student mode." But again, it's that self-awareness of when I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to be in the audience now. I'm not going to be the master teacher, but like you said, beautifully framed, I'm going to come back on the mat and be the master student." And I think that renewal really gives us huge growth. I call it, really growing that inner leader. And when you've mastered that, there's nothing in leadership that you can't handle.
Beautifully said.
No, no tsunami, whatever. Get out your samurai sword, whatever it is. Okay, I'm going to have you finish the show by answering this question. I just want to say thank you again for, taking the time and sharing your expertise. I'm happy that you're in this space. It's wonderful to share this space with so many other heart-centered leaders around the globe. And finish us off by finishing this sentence for me. Heart-centered leadership is.
Centered leadership is when you are aligned with anything you're doing and the identity you've chosen for yourself.